I said, that one last night might have been the one to end it on. And she said, really? And I said, yeah. I said, I just don't. I said, I've never, no, I've never felt like this before. I mean, if I would have never go out there again, I said, it wouldn't bother me one bit. And she said, I'm surprised to hear that. She said, you know what? She said, maybe that's something, is that something you want to start talking about? And that's sort of how it happened. And, you know, started to discuss it throughout the summer and stuff like that. And then, of course, um, I mean, you don't care if I like to,
Yeah.
okay, all right, yeah, like, okay, I'm going to tell a story. So, which I recognize, like that's what we're supposed to be doing here, but like, so this isn't how we've started every other night. So I wasn't sure if he wants me to back up so he can go do his growling stuff again or whatever. Anyway, so um, midway through the summer, I get a call from Michael Hayes, and hey, got to run by you, want to run something by, and he's already talking about next WrestleMania. And so he said, "Look, we've never done it before." And he goes, "What about?" He goes, "Just give it some thought. What about Shawn and Taker too?" And I said, "All right." He goes, "We've never done a rematch before." And he goes, "And only if we can think of other stuff." He goes, "But you put your career on the line, you know." And I said, "It's funny that you say that, but I said, we've been talking about." I said, "Dude," I said, "I mean, that last one, I don't know if it gets any better than that." And I said to him the same stuff I said to my wife, and I said, "So yeah, it's something. I mean, I'm willing to talk about it." He goes, "Well, look, he said, because you think about it," and he goes, "Look," he goes, even if you want to wrestle again, as you guys know, we can do something. We can do something. You can come back if you want." And I said, "But I said, I said it's something we've been talking about anyway." And that's how that sort of went. And as I think I don't know, I've either said it in interviews or I had it in the book, but honestly, that's how the second one came about. We had never really. I ended up coming back to work, and the Slammies came up, and Undertaker and I's match for WrestleMania was winning the award, and all of a sudden it dawned on me that, boy, wouldn't that be a great time to announce? That was like in October of the year before that next WrestleMania. I thought, wouldn't this be a great time to announce the Undertaker match and start building towards WrestleMania right now? I mean, all the way in October, and start building it for that next March. And so I went and asked Michael. I said, "Hey, what do you want me to throw something out there towards Taker tonight, accepting the award?" And he goes, "Oh, I don't know." He goes, "Are we going to do that?" And I said, "No." I said, "I think we ought to do it." I said, "I don't know about the career thing yet." I said, we haven't really made a decision on that." I said, "But we can add that later if we want. Maybe I just throw out the challenge tonight." He goes, "Well, let's go talk to Vince," and he's up at Gorilla anyway. So we're up there going. We're all kicking it around before. Now Hunter's going out and like, "Well, what are you going to do when you go out there?" I mean, because he's going out there to make the announcement and give me the award and stuff like that. And so, well, I don't know, just go ahead and go. And we're sitting there talking it around, and Hunter's out there talking and doing the presentation, and everybody's trying to sit there and make a decision on, like, do I mention it? Do I make the challenge? What do I do? And I said, "Look, I'm just going to go out there and do it." I said, I'd like to do it at the very least. Like I said, we don't know about the career thing. We can, we've got whatever it is, 6 months to throw that in there if we want. I said, "So I'm just going to throw the challenge out there and take it." And Vince is like, "So we're going to go there?" And I said, "We're going to go there." And so that's when we sort of made the decision to have the match at WrestleMania. When I went out and got this the Slammy for the match of the year on the last one, and strangely enough, came back and Taker had text both Michael and Vince. He goes, "Okay, so and he was at home, and that's how he found out what he was doing at WrestleMania, which is okay. I guess it's Shawn and I again at WrestleMania, right?" So yeah, and sometimes, I guess that's sort of my point. All the really nifty, cool stuff in wrestling sort of just happens like that a lot of the times. It's not pre-planned and not talked about too much, but that's honestly how it came about. And I'm taking a long time to get there, but yeah, I don't know. I mean, I was just, like I said, I was just ready, and that feeling honestly never left me. I mean, after that WrestleMania 25, anytime between then and that next year, had I had to walk away, I don't know, I was just ready. I was ready to embark on, one, I was really ready to go back home. and again, it sounds wishy-washy, but, honestly, to be, my children were still young. Our son was 10, our daughter was 5. To still be a big part of, the really important years of their life, be a husband to my wife, like, and it's sappy and everything else, but I'm crazy about my kids. I've been married for 20 years, and I'm still crazy about the woman. I'm still in love with my wife, as much as I was the day I married her. You know what I mean? So I was ready to go back to them, and then find out if there was anything else, in life for me, to embark on something else, if it was there. Clearly, it's turned out there isn't, so that's why I'm still around in the wrestling business.
The Rockers are such a kind of synonymous tag team with the late 80s and early 90s. And one of the things I was interested about was when you get to WWF, and you've been working for a couple of years already, but you're now known as Mr. WrestleMania. That's like the tagline for everything. And your first WrestleMania was WrestleMania 5 in Trump Plaza. I think it was against the Twin Towers. What was WrestleMania like back then? Like now it's just this, like, it's the Super Bowl and all this sort of stuff. But like, what was it like when you got to your first WrestleMania? Did it feel big at that point to be on that show in 1989?
Yeah, it was still big then. Guys were, I can remember. So that's where sort of, as you see, guys almost train differently for WrestleMania, and guys try to get into the best shape for WrestleMania and to look physically, even better at WrestleMania. And that's where sort of we learned that, was seeing that process happen. WrestleMania, the event, wasn't what it is today, but certainly in the mind of a WWE superstar at the time, or a WWE wrestler, whatever it is they're calling them these days. It was still the biggest show. That was still going to be the biggest show, most eyeballs. More people were going to see you at WrestleMania than saw you any other time. It was still where you wanted to put on your best performance and all that kind of stuff, for the most part. Again, certain guys. One thing, and again, I don't mean it in a whatever, to stir anything up. That there's a fairly decent size of the crew at that time that were of the mindset that this is just about making money, and we're still not going to kill ourselves. But there were certain guys, again, you see a Savage and a Steamboat and all of them. There was still a another group of guys that knew that, again, WrestleMania, and even the pay-per-views in general, but especially WrestleMania, was that place where you could go out there and set yourself apart. Terms like Mr. WrestleMania, terms like stealing the show and all that stuff hadn't been coined by this unbelievably cool young man yet. But I digress. No, but for certain guys, it certainly was. For us, it was just, you wanted to see if you could get on the show. I can remember when Marty and I first came into the WWF at the time, it was a big deal for us to just get on our first pay-per-view. Because, again, this was a time when if you didn't work, you didn't get paid. You weren't on a pay-per-view, you didn't get paid. You didn't get paid pay-per-view money. Anytime you were off, you didn't get paid. You made significant more money on pay-per-views than you did anything else. So there was a huge incentive for a number of different reasons to get on pay-per-views, and then clearly that incentive goes up drastically when it's WrestleMania. So for all of those reasons, WrestleMania was important. And of course, as soon as we knew, you see who you're booked against, that, okay, well, it's not going to be, it isn't going to be, glamorous, but that's also the sort of our first experience with, like, hey, you can still, sort of make an impact or get over, so to speak, and lose. And, and heck, you go back, and I think that match is like 8 minutes, something like that. And I can remember, again, at the time, 8 minutes in WrestleMania, it's not much, but, you're at WrestleMania. And I think Marty and I did a pretty decent job of putting ourselves on the map, so to speak, at that show. And again, at the time, you don't have the maturity or the intelligence sort of to grasp that, but we knew that, we knew that it was a decent match, that it went well. And so from our standpoint, we had done certainly everything that we could do. We had a decent match, good, exciting match at WrestleMania. hopefully that makes us look in the eyes of the company pay-per-view ready. And honestly, I think it is. It's one of those things that if you now look at the career of the Rockers, I mean, they sort of made sure we were sort of that group that could always, start out the pay-per-view, because you wanted to start out the pay-per-view with come out of the gate strong. And we were those guys that you could go to, because you'd start the pay-per-view with a tag team match, and the Rockers could, start you off with a bang usually.